It's 7 o'clock, and I'm Maya Hasagawa, and I'm chairing the Development Review Board meeting for February 15th, 2023. And I open the meeting for those of you who aren't familiar with the chair's opening remarks. So if you've heard this before, please bear with me. I know the members of the board are probably sick of hearing this, but anyway, it's a legal requirement. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. Application materials and written testimony are posted to the town website as received. Hearings may be continued at the board's discretion if materially important documents are received after the submission deadline. In the event our decision is appealed to the environmental court, the court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from our hearing, the regulations, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and decision of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by the board. So I strongly urge all of you to speak up at this hearing. As we are on the record, we are going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So would any applicants and anyone wishing to speak to an application, please stand. If you're in the audience and you're going to speak or present or testify in any way, please stand. Are you planning, just in case? Those of you who are on Zoom and are planning to testify, Carol, and I don't know whether Mr. Ozer is going to testify. Are you planning to testify?
No, I don't plan to testify. I'm here simply as an observer.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine. Carol, can you unmute yourself? Okay. So please affirm the following. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. Just say, I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. You can be seated.
Has everybody signed in?
Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. Out of 7, we have 5, 6, we have 7 board members here because we have an alternate. Is that right, Brian? Did I count right? After taking testimony, if we do not have a full board present, which we do, to hear your application, then we will consider a request to continue your application to the next public meeting. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it is the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development application. The town does not have a special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, town attorney, or other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant and all other interested parties. And I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which was December 21st.
Motion that we approve the minutes for December 21st?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
2022, just for the record.
So Gary has made the motion. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of December 21st, 2022.
Maya, I have not an edit or anything, but just kind of a question for my own thing. For the Holton Home case, where it says the applicant shall submit a report, and we all know what the rest of that says, is that just solely for our own edification, or can we act on that report? What's our understanding?
My understanding is that we can act on it if we're not satisfied. I mean, we can ask Bob Stevens to give us more information and to
Right,
come back.
that was my understanding too, but the
Yeah.
way it's written, I was unclear, so. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other questions about the minutes? I am, because we've got people on Zoom and people here, I'm going to ask people to vote. Michael? Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Dan?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Nora? Yes. Gary?
Aye.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the minutes of December 21st are approved. Did everyone who is planning to speak take the oath? People came in late. Are you planning to speak?
Possibly.
We may.
Okay, can you stand up, please? I'm going to ask you to agree to the following statement. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalty of perjury.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly warned, Brian?
Yep. The meeting was properly warned, but there was a problem with the warning for JMD Hospitality. I had forgotten that, in fact, that needed a waiver, and I did not warn it for a waiver. So I'm going to request that it be continued to the meeting of March 15th, and I've consulted with the applicant, and they feel that's acceptable.
Okay. We can vote on that as soon as I appoint Tom as the alternate to hear all applications. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the continuance to March, is it March 15th?
March 15th.
For JMD Hospitality?
I move for the continuance of March 15th for, was it AMD?
JMD.
JMD, March 15, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
23, sorry, correction. 23.
That's right, it is. Okay, all in favor of granting the continuance? Michael?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Nora. Aye. And I'll vote aye. So it's 7. Is anybody saying no? 7 votes, so. Okay, it's 7-0 to grant the continuance. Okay, the first,
Just any conflicts of interest or ex parte
oh, I
communications?
forgot that. Yes. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications about any of the items on the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is Elnu Abenaki Incorporated. Oh, sorry. See, she's the vice chair, so she has to tell me what to do. First item on the agenda is the Town of Brattleboro Waterfront District. Request for riparian area and wetlands conditional use and site plan and local 250 approval to construct a bike pump track at 21 Memorial Drive. Carol, are you presenting?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to explain to us your project, please?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to show up via Zoom. I had another meeting that was going to take me right until 7 o'clock, and I could just walk across. So I do appreciate being able to come on via Zoom this evening. I'm here to talk about the proposed pump track, bicycle pump track at Living Memorial Park. This is just a pretty basic, straightforward project. It's about 3,000 square feet. And it's another type of playground. Instead of, it being a play structure, what a pump track is, and Brian and I talked a little earlier today, and I'm wondering if for the board's benefit, if we took 30 seconds and showed a video of what a pump track is, so that everybody has a good visual as to what we're talking about this evening. So Brian, do you have that you can share with the committee?
Yep, Steve is bringing that up right now.
And we thought, just taking this 30 seconds and giving you that opportunity to see, how you could get excited about purchasing a bike and coming to Living Memorial Park and using such a facility, such a resource. Great, thank you, Brian. As you saw in that clip there's not a lot of pedaling that's going on. It's a lot of upper body strength. So it would be constructing rolls and banks, so riders of all ability level could go out and enjoy the park, enjoy the exercise, whether they have a small toddler out in the playground, and an older child out on their bike on the pump track. And it's, there's another pump track in town at Academy School, and it would be of similar size, about 3,000 square feet. We're not looking to cut into the earth at all. What we would be doing is bringing in a topsoil mixture and just creating banks and rolls and curves and contours as we lay that topsoil mixture on top of the existing earth that we have there now. And the project is straightforward as that, is bringing in some dirt, playing with some big equipment, making some rolls, making some banks, making some jumps, to add a new alternative at Living Memorial Park. I think that Brian also has a previous site plan that he could pull up so we can talk about the location of where this proposed pump track would go in. If you haven't been at the Living Memorial recently, you know, everyone knows where the playground is. Out beyond the playground, this is an older site plan where you see basketball courts and volleyball court. We only have one basketball court, and then between the volleyball court and the existing basketball court is bocce. So basically what we're proposing is to put the pump track in the area of the volleyball. The volleyball program, outdoor program, has not been successful. That was an area that was just a sand volleyball court, and has been left to turn into green space, and we'd like to utilize that space in building the pump track. So in a nutshell, you know, that's what Rec and Parks is proposing, or the town is proposing to you this evening. The neat thing about this type of playground, if you want to call it, pump track, is you don't have to be, you know, an advanced biker. It's likely that you would just see toddlers out there on balance bikes, on a balance bike, being able to utilizing the space. So I think it'll be a nice addition to everything that we have at Living Memorial for families to enjoy during the spring, summer, and fall.
Okay, so if you look at the old site plan, there's only one basketball court, right? Is that what you said?
Correct.
And so is it gonna take up just where the volleyball court is showing, or will it cover where the second basketball court was also?
It'll be pretty much where the volleyball court, where it says volleyball court, because the other area, we have 2 bocce courts in that area now.
Are there any other questions? Tom?
I have a few questions about erosion and water and such. The video you showed, Carol, of the video, it was all bare dirt, bare soil. Is that the way this is going to be? Bare soil?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then how does the land slope to the west? Well, no, that's not accurate, west and east. Like, which way does it slope down to the pond, and does it slope down to the brook?
Both directions.
Okay. Do you know
There's a little bit of.
Okay. Do you know the if that pond is a natural pond or man-made? Do we know?
That pond is, I believe it's a man-made pond, and yes.
Well, then that's more lenient according to our land use regs if it's a man-made pond.
Yeah.
So that's in your favor. Do you know the distances, or the distance to the brook?
It's about 65
I
feet.
don't know.
65?
Yeah.
So that's over the 50-foot previously developed. Okay. Is there any measure? Oh, I saw a detention swale in one of your in your application between the pump track and the brook. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Just the distance over the grass and the forest soils is probably enough for LAD stormwater treatment, but given it is a dirt track, a small swale would allow for collecting any sediment that runs off before it comes into the forested areas. So it would be gentle, probably just 5 or 6 inches deep and very gradual.
But it'll be built to catch anything or everything, okay?
Yeah, just grassed and gradual enough that people won't really trip on it or
Okay.
create a problem for a mower.
Right, yeah, and I would ask that, kind of similar about the pond, but since it's a man-made pond, our regs don't really speak to that, at least for what I caught. Is there sufficient woody vegetation in between the site and the brook
Yeah.
currently? There's about 50 feet-ish of it, and
It's
so.
wooded.
Okay,
It's about 50 feet from top of bank, and there's a really major slope failure there.
mhm.
But this shouldn't impact it because there will be enough buffer.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, my question was, Carol, was someplace, and I can't find it right off the bat, you mentioned that there was an informal path to the tennis courts. And the regs would require a marked pedestrian pathway to the pump track and the tennis courts and the bocce. Tennis courts. Not the tennis courts, the basketball court.
Right, there is a path that runs along the side of the, way back, runs along the side of the pool complex. And then there is not a path that leads out to, informal, but there's not a defined path that leads out to basketball courts.
I think that's one of the things that we would want to see, a defined path.
That's certainly something that we can, would definitely add into our plan if that is, part of the conditions.
It doesn't have to be paved or anything. I mean, just make sure that people know that that's the pathway.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions from the board? Dan, John, I think you can take the schematic down. John, do you have
I
any
do,
questions? Oh, Carol's gonna
let's
say
one
something.
more. Yeah, I definitely want to, I'm pretty sure that that's a man-made pond, but I would like to, certainly check the records and get back with Brian on that, because I don't want to be saying it's man-made if it's not, and I don't want to say it's not if it is.
So then, if it's a natural pond, should we make it subject to the land use regs?
Yes.
Which is
Yeah.
a 50-foot revegetation, woody vegetation, but there's about 30 feet that exist, right? So, obviously,
35.
35, yeah, so maybe within that.
So it doesn't really speak to already developed sites, which this is. And generally, when you have a standard like that, you bring it as close to the standard as possible to preserve the use.
Right.
Outdoor recreation is actually an exempted use.
Oh.
So the board wouldn't really have to address it at all, but it probably is good practice to have some unknown buffer.
Right.
And it's currently classified as a Class 2 wetland in the Vermont State Wetlands Inventory.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's correct. I think that was done off of aerial photography. And as part of the state Act 250 permit, the biologist would have to come out and actually delineate the wetland or reclassify it. So in some ways, how it is treated, it's going to be determined by how she classifies it.
Mhm.
Yeah, there'll be an Act 250 review, right, after our review.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I believe so. I haven't asked for a determination yet, but the park is covered by an Act 250 permit, and it's likely that an amendment would be required.
So they would look at the pond issue.
Right. And that's what, yeah, I see the caveat there. And just for my question, the pond is fenced all in, right? So no one accesses it anyway? So it's not like woody
Yes.
vegetation that grows up is gonna hinder people's wading their, dipping their toes in or anything? No one goes in anyway, so, okay.
There's a chain link fence that surrounds the pond for that very reason you just spoke about, safety being number one in an area that you got a body of water next to a playground. And several years ago, it was a decision that was made for everybody's safety to put up a chain link fence that surrounds that pond.
Mm-hmm. But there's no barrier along the Whetstone Brook, right?
There is not.
Okay. And I'm not saying there should be or anything, I'm just wondering. And it makes sense that it's farther from the playground than the pond. Okay.
Okay, Dan, you were gonna ask a question?
Yes, hi everyone. I appreciate your presentation, Carol. I just had a couple of questions. Really, the primary one is structural, or I appreciate you providing the sample build sheet, which I understand is the actual build is going to depend on the actual situation. It's fairly flat, but there might be some issues with, as Tom brought up, runoff over time. And I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts on structurally. So I happen to know a little bit about pump tracks. I appreciate your video too, though. It probably wouldn't be possible to do something as close to that. And I'm just going to suggest or ask you if you've considered, especially at the top of your diagram there, turn A, let's call it, the one that's a little tighter at the top. Have you considered that might require something like what they do in more wet climates, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, they actually build berms with wood, and that would require, thanks Steve, that would require, because that's a tight turn, you will have some pretty advanced riders, I'm sure, who can take a fast turn, but safety-wise and erosion-wise, if it has to be very steep, then it's going to be problematic. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
We've talked about a lot of different things about what the final will look like, and that bank may not be as steep as you're seeing it there.
Understood. I'm just saying, sort of hypothetically, if you had that kind of, something similar to your diagram.
Right. We hadn't talked about putting, banking it with wood at all. That was not something that has come into the conversations yet.
Okay, fair enough. And I know this might be beyond our purview, but I'm really just curious, long-term management, how let's say there are two tracks. There's maintenance, of course, of the physical facility that'll go along with the parks. That's fine, but I'm thinking behaviorally. If you were mentioning, let's just say the compatibility between kids on Strider bikes, like 3-year-olds versus, I just would hope that behaviorally, essentially, I'm thinking that like a pool has a lifeguard, right? Will there be any sort of management behaviorally at this facility?
There will not be. We'll be probably handling this much like we handle the skate park.
Okay.
And what we have found at the skate park, certainly signage has been very effective, and I think that will be the situation here too. Because we have found it's really actually very neat to watch the different levels of skateboarders, along with bikers and scooters up at the skate park, and how everybody respects everybody's ability and handles themselves accordingly. Because of the scale of this being so small,
Right.
I'm not anticipating those type of issues nor were we planning on having supervision out there other than parental supervision.
Fair enough, okay. I just wanted to see if that, becomes an issue. Just wanted to mention it.
Right, thank you.
Steve, can you take that down? Thank you. John, did you have any questions? Or Michael?
No, I don't. No, I don't. All set.
Okay. So, is there a motion to
Maya,
approve?
I think there are members of the public
Oh.
who might want to speak to this.
I forgot, because we haven't had members of the public here for so long. Seriously. We didn't have anybody in December or November, so
Well, let's say
I'm not
welcome.
used to having people out there. Okay, does anybody wish to speak to this? If you could come forward. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Jeff Brewer, a longtime resident of Brattleboro and a longtime resident on Guilford Street. And I've seen the Brattleboro Music Center come in. I've seen the skateboard park come in. As you know, Guilford Street is a cut-through. It's handling way too many trucks that are overweight, and it just continues. So I worry about the volume that at a high capacity where ingress and egress, is there just one way in for bikers to get there through the toddler area? Or I'm not clear on that, Carol, maybe. Describe how they would come in and what the capacity of the track like this might be. Thank you.
Yes, there would just be the same entrance as you would enter to go out on the playground or go out to play basketball. It would just be that one means of enter in and out, entrance and egress of the facility. As far as capacity, I don't, I think in the beginning it's going to be a novelty. Like the skate park was a novelty, and we had more usage in that first 3 or 4 weeks that we were open, and then it kind of leveled out to more of a manageable usage with, and do I see 6 or 8 people out here on a regular basis? Probably not, but I do, on a daily basis, I don't, every hour on the hour, probably over the course of the day, when you're in the heat of the summer with summer activities. I think over the course of the day, you're probably going to see 20 to 25 bikers out there enjoying it. Once parents figure out, hey, this is an option for my older kid to be out on the pump track while my younger one is on the playground or at the swimming pool, up at the skate park, many variety of options.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and just one other thing that I know that we have law enforcement, and I think it's been pretty good in terms of monitoring these areas, because kids go there all night. I hear them at the coming down in the middle of winter on the Park Hill. I hear them swimming in the pool during the summer. So you can expect somebody or a youngster to get out there after hours. So I worry about stuff like that a little bit now that.
As I understand, there will be no lighting. Is that correct?
There is no lighting.
So it's going to be pretty dark up there.
They count no matter what. One way or another.
So I guess the question I want to ask, well, first of all, being on the Parks Department as well too, I don't know if I have to abstain or recuse myself.
Yes, you do.
So it was a question, but I'll save it for our next meeting with Carol when I meet with her.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were on the, you have to recuse yourself.
Absolutely.
I'll make a notation that you have a conflict of interest with this one.
Yeah.
Just for transparency.
Are there any other questions from members of the public or members of the board? Okay, I would ask that a motion be made to, I have to find the right thing to read here. To approve, the town of Brattleboro's request for riparian area and wetlands conditional use, site plan and local Act 250 to construct a bike pump track near 21 Memorial Park Drive. And I would request that we add a couple of conditions. One is that if the state wetlands biologist determines that the pond is a wetland, a 25-foot buffer shall be marked as a no-mow area and allowed to vegetate naturally. And that the woody vegetation along the whetstone not be disturbed. Are there any other conditions that anybody wants to add? Hearing none, is there a motion to that effect? You can't make it.
So moved, Maya, as you spoke.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the building of the pump track at Memorial Park with the conditions that were mentioned. Michael,
Yes.
Dan,
Aye.
John,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Nora,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. So that's 6-0, and one person had a conflict in that, and, okay, thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much for your time this evening, and again, thank you for allowing me to come on via Zoom, so I can accommodate both meetings.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we will get to, is it Elnu Abenaki Incorporated? Request for site plan and conditional use approval to change the use to religious facility and nature park and to establish an Abenaki Cultural Center at 25 Shore Drive. Do you want to come over here and sit? That's the best place for him to do a presentation? Okay. Okay, do you want to introduce yourself and then tell us about your project?
Sui, for sure. I'd like to thank the chair and the board for hearing this request tonight. It's good to be here with you and share this pretty exciting project, to my mind, and members of the public as well. This might be something with which you're unfamiliar, and I would like to be able to answer any questions you might have. So I'll introduce myself. Kwai Mziwi, greetings everyone. Intelewi Z Lisal Tandai Wantastagak Tali Sukokik Bakwanon Guzian. I'm called Rich Holshoe. That's my name in English. I am of this place, traditionally known as Wantastagak, now Brattleboro. I live right in town here, down by the hospital on the south side, you know, where all the ritzy people live. And been in town here as a resident since 2012. I had a business here in town for 7 years previous, and I have been in southern Vermont for 40 years. So I I love this place. It's a good place, and I appreciate it. I am founder and co-director of a nonprofit called Atawi, which is a cultural awareness nonprofit, 2 years old, formerly under the fiscal sponsorship of Retreat Farm, and newly free of that arrangement due to Retreat Farm's own restructuring and downsizing, which they are well on their way, and which I applaud. It's a good move. We are now, as a nonprofit, Atawi, under the sponsorship of the tribe itself, of which I am a citizen. Elnu Abenaki is one of the 4 Vermont state recognized Abenaki tribes in the contemporary Native community here. I am serving as the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer or Cultural Relations Officer with the tribe. And the nonprofit work that I do is to help other people to learn about these things with which they may not be familiar. And it's good work. There's a lot of it to do, and I'm passionate about it. And my work week runs around 80 hours probably. But it's good to be here because it's good work, as I said. I am also chair of the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs currently. So I work with all of the Native communities in the state, as well as the one of which I'm a citizen. One of my fellow citizens is here with me, Jill Adams. Thank you for being here. So that's who I am. And why I am here is this request by Elnu Abenaki Inc. What's the Inc. part about? That is the nonprofit associated and directed by the tribe. It allows us to receive funds, disperse funds, to hold property. The tribe itself is not a legal entity per se. The Inc., the corporation, allows us to do that. It's the tool. In a little background, how we got to this point. Native people have been living in this valley and nearby regions for upwards of 13,000 years. Brattleboro has been here for about 260 years. So there's a lot of stories and a lot of history beyond the beginning of this town and everything that comes with it. But we're all here now and we have to figure this out. So thus the DRB hearing, right? The area that we're talking about, this particular plot, is just under 2 acres. It has a single building standing on it right now, which is what is left of the homestead that stood there, most of which was consumed by fire about 2 years ago. There was tenants in the building, multiple tenants in the building, and through lack of care, the building burned and it was razed to the ground except for the back section, which is basically a small barn, garage barn, which has 1 living space on the 2nd floor where there is still a current tenant. So it's been functioning as residential, and it's in a residential zone, which is what brings us here tonight. It was originally built upon by a farmer named Holland Pettis around 1830. He's the first person that lived out on that end of town. There was nothing else out there at the time in terms of residences. And he was the first Euro-American, if you want to use that label, to begin a farm. It was farmland at the time. And he farmed out there for quite a few decades. Then it passed through any number of hands, one of the better known being Boardman Eaton, for whom Eaton Avenue is named, where the property fronts on Eaton as well as Putney Road. And Boardman Eaton was a very interesting character. If you don't know about him, you should check it out. He was a prominent attorney. This was his summer house. And he was very active in New York City labor planning with the city employees during the time of Tammany Hall and Boss Tweed. Mr. Eaton was beaten within an inch of his life by those people because the politics were not to their liking. But he went on to a fulfilling career, and he is a prominent citizen at one time, and that was his house. And then it went through a series of hands, many different people over the years, until the most recent owner, Ian Leahy, who is a resident in Provincetown, bought the property in the early 2000s. It was part of a subdivision that was done by Michael LaCroix and someone else a few years before, I think in the late 90s. What remained of the farmstead, rest of the development in the area mostly having been done at that point, was chopped up into 1, 2, 3, 4 lots. A small private road was brought into that subdivision called Shore Drive, and those 4 lots sat there. One was sold way out at the end, what I call the point, facing the marina, to a local doctor who has since moved out of town, and it became a liability for him. The 2 lots in the middle remained in the possession of Ian Leahy with the house for many years. And Ian never actually lived here with his wife. His plans didn't come to fruition, and so he rented it out to multiple tenants. And in the meantime, property taxes being what they are, and land being having a value of its own, it was likely that all of these lots were going to go on the market at some point, not being actively used by their owners. And the lot out on the point was purchased on behalf of the tribe by Vermont Land Trust about 3 years ago. We were not in a position to do it ourselves at the time. And so they purchased it, and they still hold that property. It will probably be transferred over to Elnu Abenaki Inc. Later this year.
The Hogel Preserve?
I'm sorry?
The Hogel Preserve?
No, it abuts the Hogel Trust Wildlife Sanctuary, which backs around there. There is a deeded access to the Hogel Wildlife Sanctuary across all of these lots following Shore Drive and bordering the Shriner property. So there is a certain amount of public foot traffic through there at all times. Folks who know about that wonderful place, the Hogel.
Yeah, I've hiked down there.
If you don't know about it, those of us who do know about it aren't going to tell you. But it's awesome. It's wonderful. Wonderful place. And this land is immediately adjacent to that. So that's the furthest lot. That's about 3/4 of an acre. The 2 small lots in the middle were purchased by a private party 2 years ago, Stuart Strothman. And he has his own little project going on there. Ian Leahy's house and the 2 acres that were remaining were going on the market this summer. We, as a tribal community, have been well aware that this was imminent. We were watching because we are aware of the cultural significance of that place, which goes back thousands of years. You may or may not know that, and it's been relatively well publicized in the newspapers, that there's a petroglyph site in the West River. It is submerged right now, about 15 feet down, because of the building of the Vernon Dam in 1909, which raised the water level up here in Brattleboro 15 feet, 30 feet down at the dam, 10 miles downriver. And the petroglyphs went underwater because they were visible before then, because they were created by people who were present in that place at that time. Petroglyphs are a very rare occurrence in the Northeast. More common elsewhere, but very rare in the Northeast. Within what is now the state of Vermont, there are only really 2 certified locations, this being one of them. The other one is up the river at the Great Falls or Bellows Falls, which are above water. They are not impounded. These are still present though. Whenever there are petroglyphs, it tells you that if you are familiar with the cosmology of the people who created them, that is an extremely significant place for a number of cultural reasons. This being one of those places. There are petroglyphs there, they mark that place. And wherever there are petroglyphs such as this, we know, and the historical record does show here in Brattleboro, that there are multiple unmarked burials. Within eyesight of this particular plot, in the Brattleboro newspapers, I can name 6 graves that were uncovered in the past 260 years. 2 of them on this property by the farmer aforementioned. As he was plowing, he uncovered graves. And they're in the Annals of Brattleboro, if you read your history. So, we knew that this was a very sensitive place. It had not been honored in the way that it probably should have been, but people did not know for the most part. And what you don't know about, you can't care about. So this is some of the work that I'm involved in to raise this awareness. And when this came on the market, we approached Vermont Land Trust to help us purchase it because we are an unresourced community. State recognition comes with no fringe benefits, just the piece of paper. And then you're on your own. So we didn't have any resources. We approached Vermont Land Trust. Excuse my explanation here, but I want you to have the backstory. They were very willing to help. They're a good partner, and they offered to jump right into the project. They knew this was coming because we've been in conversation. And as it turns out, the landowner, the seller, did not want to deal with the land trust. Simply because the land trust has due diligence they have to follow. They need to get an appraisal. They can't pay over market value. They work with public money. They have to do an environmental assessment. They need to assess the building for safety. An environmental assessment. They don't want to be buying a brownfield. So they had contingencies, and the owner said no contingencies, cash only. So we had to ask the Vermont Land Trust to step aside, which they did graciously. And when we decided we had to raise this purchase price ourselves, and through the generosity of many people, we raised all of the money in 6 weeks. And on September 9th, we closed on the property. We did not want to see that developed or dug up. It falls under the category of a religious facility in today's zoning. It is a sacred site, a spiritual site. To disturb the earth there would not be the right thing to be doing. So we are here to ask you to consider this change of use to a religious facility, as in quotes. As I make clear in the application here, it is not our intent, and indeed our intent to scrupulously avoid any earth disturbance here. There is not going to be any earth moving going on. Basically, the property and the house are going to stay exactly as they are. Just a change of use. If there is anything built at any point, and it's not contemplated right now, it would be something in the terms of outdoor seating, or maybe a roof for in case it rains. But no digging, no slabs, no nothing. The building will be used exactly as it is, no modifications. After the fire, the side toward the building that was torn down was rebuilt. It needed to be sided because it had been, attached in typical New England vernacular fashion. Big house, little house, pack house, barn, as they say. You know what I'm talking about. Jill grew up on a farm, and they redid that side toward Putney Road and added a 2-story porch for the use of the tenants. who, as I said, are still in there. Their lease expires at the end of April. We gave them a 2-month extension so they didn't have to move out in February, trying to be a good neighbor. And they are well aware of this, and we are good friends. They've been there a long time, and they've been good tenants. I like them a lot. They're good kids. So in May, we would like to begin to use this building, and so I'm trying to stay ahead of that. What does use the building mean? Like I said, no changes of the building itself. The residential use will move more toward a occasional use by whoever from the tribe wants to come there and use basically the garage spaces, which are enclosed on the ground floor. There are 2 garage spaces and 2 workrooms behind them, where we can do cultural activities, traditional crafts, storing food, should we have a place to grow food someday. This is not a place to grow food. Again, ground disturbance, and it's surrounded by trees. There might be a little garden, but that's about it. There's a garden there already. In terms of the residential space upstairs, it will not be occupied full-time, and so it's not technically going to be a residence anymore. I will probably be present on the property most days, using it as an occasional office during the day. I work from home now with my nonprofit. I think it's important that somebody be in the building to take care of it and be present so it's not vacant. And then there will be occasional visitors by tribal members. How many are we talking? Elnu is a very small tribe. We are only about 60 or 70 people, and most of them don't even live nearby. So they won't be here much. I would say, well, there are 4 vehicles on the property already that owned by the tenants. 2 that they use daily and 2 that they happen to own. I would say most of the time there'll only be 1 vehicle there. Occasionally there might be 3 or 4. If there was a tribal gathering, I don't think you'd see more cars than you'd see at any family gathering, at any residence on that street. Ample parking. It has a big yard, big driveway. It has curb cuts onto both Putney Road and Eaton Avenue. The curb cut, the existing traditional entrance on the Putney Road is a little sketchy in terms of line of sight. I anticipate that we will probably use that only as an entrance. It's not a great driveway to take off from. You can come in on Eaton Avenue and use the back driveway readily enough at Shore Drive. Shore Drive is a private road. Anyone who owns property on that road has the right to use it, and currently that is the neighbor behind Stuart Strothman. And there is considerable amount of foot traffic down the Hogle Wildlife Sanctuary access trail. There are other de facto trails on the property that are used by the public all the time. Off of Putney Road, hopping over the guardrail by the bridge, Hogle, and a couple other that wander around out on the point. A lot of folks go back there to go swimming, to go fishing, go bird watching, to walk the dog, and that is where the mention of a nature park comes in. This is not a nature park to be developed and built. We are acknowledging that the public uses this land. It is intended to be a place to inform and educate the public, and so we want the public to come and continue to come and use it exactly as they have. No change there. It functions as a little wild place in the neighborhood. It protects the river shore there, natural growth. Not so long ago, that was cleared land. The Brattleboro Historical Society has a pretty good photograph collection, and they have a photograph taken from Putney Road looking at the roller rink when it was being built. And it looks right across the site. The building was not up yet, just the basement. It looks right across the site, and you look across the river and you're looking exactly at this piece of property, and it's cleared. That was in the late 50s, except for a few pine trees. And it's all grown up now, mostly in locusts. Locust loves that kind of soil there. It's all sand. There's some ledge underneath that sand, but those are glacial deposits from the long, deep history of this place, including the West River itself, which bears the traditional name of the Wantastuk, which gives us the name of this place, Wantastagak. We are at the West River. So it's a significant place. We recognize that. We would like other folks to know that. There are many, many, many more stories that can be told, and we look forward to being able to share them. In terms of the public coming to this place, we have to navigate. The public does go to religious facilities occasionally, or to natural areas, and they already do. But in terms of the accessing the building, I will have to navigate public access codes. And that'll be a whole nother thing to get into. So I'm not here for that right now, just the change of use. There is a few things in the application here. I have a letter that was written by the state archaeologist, Jess Robinson, which describes the significance of the place from a Western scholarship viewpoint when we were in the process of purchasing it, negotiating and purchasing it. As witness to that, there's also a description basically of why the tribe decided to buy this ourselves. A letter I put together for information to potential donors. There's a site map here which basically describes the property exactly as it is. Nothing added here. And I think that's about it. So that explains why we're here.
Is this what you're referring to?
Yep.
The property does have two addresses. It was sold as 25 Shore Drive on the private road, but the driveway comes out onto Eaton Avenue, and there's a driveway onto Putney Road, and so in some places, including I believe the tax map, no, not the tax map, but somewhere, it says 350 Putney Road. That's the former address, before Shore Drive was put in. But it fronts on both of those streets. It also fronts onto the Wantastuk, the West River, and it abuts Stuart Strothman and the Shriners and the Hogle Wildlife Sanctuary right away.
So my first question is, you now own both of those plots, is that true?
We don't currently hold the title for the property all the way to the left, but that transfer will probably happen later this year, and it is not contiguous because the two lots in the middle there, the roughly rectangular ones, are owned by Stuart Strothman.
Okay, so the one that's marked 6.1 and the one that's marked 6.2, you do not own?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
I have nothing. It's very thorough. I was potentially going to ask about, is there some discrepancy or concern with the, occasional residential and religious facility, but looking at our definition of religious facility, it includes, classrooms, residential quarters, spaces to accommodate social activities as being
Yeah,
secondary or adjunct to the primary
Yeah.
being religious. So.
yeah, and
So I have
it's,
nothing.
and it's an approved, can't remember the word.
Or protected.
Yeah, it's an allowed, it's a permitted use in a residential area, religious.
It's conditional use.
Is it conditional? Yeah. Oh, it's the nature part that's,
I'm looking at it, it's a conditional
Yeah,
use.
nature or recreational park is a permitted use.
Yes.
And the religious facility is
conditional.
conditional. Yeah. So are you applying for both, or?
Yeah, it was our motivation here was that its significance as a sacred site, but we acknowledge that it is used by the public as a natural area, and we want to encourage that. And it's the landscape itself that occasions its significance as a sacred site. It's that landscape, that context. So it's an important part of that.
Dan, or John, or Michael, do you have any questions?
No, very thorough.
No questions.
Well, I'll chime in. I really appreciate your presentation, by the way, and I don't want to belabor any points, but I just wanted to ask about the map being shown, the burial area and the existing trail situation. I'm just, if you are going to be publicly accessible, I was just wanting to ask really if you have any concerns about vandalism or any of the issues you might expect when it's let's say it's on Google or something available to the public, and anyone might show up.
That's a really good question. That is a concern. That's the immediate motivation for acquiring and protecting the property, to make sure that nothing happens further. Obviously, it has been disturbed historically. We are not going to be doing any, like I said, digging or anything ourselves. Whoever's there at rest deserves to stay at rest. We are not going to be encouraging that, and that's why someone's going to be present at all times to make sure that that doesn't happen. It's not that hard. If you are a person who looks for artifacts, or in the lingo they're called looters, you already know the places to go. And the fact that this area has not been significantly dug up is quite remarkable. And we want it to stay that way going forward. There are other places nearby that are not so fortunate. I see it all the time in my work. This place, it's an exceptional opportunity, and we're fortunate to be able to do this. And I think that the more people understand, the more respect can be encouraged, and it will happen less because other people will be paying attention. So it's always a possibility, and we are taking active measures to make sure that it is less probable.
I really appreciate that. Could I follow up with a different topic? I'm sorry, I have been to this property in the past, and I'm familiar with the history of the fire. I haven't seen it since the most recent purchase, but has anything already been done with the foundation and the chimney that was still there as of, I think, definitely earlier last year? And if not, I'm wondering what's to become of that. I believe you could call it a structure still.
Mm-hmm. The damaged building was razed to the ground and by a contractor and hauled away, and the foundation that was left was backfilled with soil and graded and seeded. The center chimney that was in the original farmhouse is still standing there without the stack, just the fireplaces themselves. I
Right.
think the idea was that maybe it could be used by the tenant as a barbecue or a cookout or something like that. Practically speaking, the fireplace was never built to be in an exterior location, so it's not pointed to handle the weather. And it doesn't have a stack, so it's probably not going to pull properly. So at the moment, it's a liability. In terms of sitting there, I don't know what's going to happen to that. We may just take it down. I don't think it has any practical use. It's just a novelty. So that might come down, but we haven't decided on that yet.
Interesting. I'm also familiar with what you mentioned, how the facade of the remaining building was repaired and so forth. I'm not sure, this is probably farther afield for you, but the banister across that porch and so forth, I would assume would need to be adjusted for public use and so forth. I'm sure you'll cross that bridge when you get there, but definitely residential is different than public. And I guess I just wanted to maybe put a point on the residential conversion here. I don't have a problem with it, except that, and I think this is not really an exception, if it is going to become essentially, it's built as living space right now. If it's going to become office space combined with living space, I would just think you're definitely going to have to come back at some point and discuss the physical changes to the building.
Mm-hmm. I anticipate, to your point about public use of the second floor, I anticipated that any public use will stay on the ground floor, simply to avoid some of those liabilities, which is garage space basically.
Yeah, I don't think we have any purview over interior, the interior design of a building, Dan.
Oh, I don't mean design or anything like that. I just mean, it sounds like there will be tribal members visiting, and there's going to be sort of a use of the building. I know it's not going to be rented out. That's what you're saying, but it just seems like if it's going to be, let's say, a multi-purpose space, that it's feasible public would go up to the second floor. That's neither here nor, that's not here nor there right now.
Mm-hmm. There's no intention to have the general public on the second floor. Yeah.
So if you're going to build amenities on the property, like you said, benches and maybe some kind of kiosk or something, is that that's not something that we have to do, or do we? Is that considered a site improvement?
So I would suggest a condition that site features shall not be disturbed. Site plan changes will require administrative approval for minor site plan approvals and board approval for major site plan approvals. So that type of outdoor seating and kiosk would be a minor site plan. A major site plan would be if you were to do reinforced turf or something for parking.
And I would say the same signage that you put up can be administratively approved. Are there any comments or questions from the members of the public?
Oh, I was going to ask one question.
Are there members of the public who want to speak to the application?
We can wait for the other board question.
Thank you. I guess the question was you said you're going to have activities and events. I was just trying to figure out where the parking would be at. Would it be? I'm just trying to get a better idea, because looking at the map, I can't really tell where parking would be on that.
There's a large cleared area in front of the garage, and it's a pretty long driveway.
Okay. And it says ADA accessibility with all that, everything.
Yeah, everything's at grade.
Okay, I was just trying to get, I was looking on it to see.
Yeah.
Okay. This goes out. Okay, sounds good, thank you.
While we're on parking, if somebody wanted to come, I mean, there are people that hike out and then go over to the river.
Yeah.
Are you going to allow public parking in that area?
No, the public parks along the street right now,
Yeah.
and that would stay the same.
Members of the public?
Sure. You go first.
Can you identify yourself?
Sure. I'm Janice Warren. We live abutting to the property. To follow up on the parking questions, there is significant use that has evolved over time, which is great that's so well used. But that parking does get fairly full. So I guess the question is whether you're imagining that if there are events, whether you would pull the parking inside into the property, or whether it would add to what's on the street.
I would want to encourage any visitors that were coming specifically to that property to park on the parcel. Of course, they have the right to park on the street, but we would want to use our own first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then another question, and just from I don't know if this is the DRB's purview here, but would this change of use mean that it comes off of the tax rolls? Is that as a 501c3 owner?
Not simply, it's not that easy. 501c3s don't naturally automatically get exemption. In this case, because it's a tribal entity, there was a state legislation passed last year that does give tribally held properties tax exemption. And that takes effect this summer. So in terms of property tax, it will be tax exempt as of July. I said not all 501c3s get that automatically. Churches do. And many other entities, Foreign Legion. There's a whole long list of exempt properties. Mm-hmm. And tribally held and controlled properties are now on that list. The impact on that statewide, and the reason that the law was successful, is that there's almost none. And because that property taxes are a barrier to entry if you're an unresourced community. You can't afford to hold them. And that's the reason that did pass, recognizing that. So that will probably be the case as of July 1. I have to go through a application process with the town for that. Again, it's not automatic.
So then just ask the question there, that would happen whether we approve the conditional use or not?
Yeah, the tribe owns the property, so
Right.
it would happen
Okay,
anyway.
so what we say here doesn't make any difference to that.
Right.
And in fact, it's not something the board could
Right.
consider.
We can't do anything
No,
about
we
that.
can't, but it doesn't matter anyway.
Okay. The other thing I would just mention is there probably could be some clarification of property lines and right-of-way, because it's kind of messy right now. And so just to make sure that longstanding protected right-of-way that is not exactly where it's mapped, is aligned with what it ought to be based on use. And it, because it technically doesn't cut through that property, but maybe on the side it does. But, I don't know if there are plans to get it surveyed and have some clarifications based on that.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Through conversations with Jennifer Garrett, who is in charge of the Vermont Land Trust local office, and they do hold that property out at the end. They are already talking about, and with you, I believe, to have that line resurveyed and that well established. And it is their intention to continue to follow through on that, through the body of Vermont Land Trust.
And I assume there's also coordination and vision between the Hogel Trust and the equipment usage that's required to maintain that property, perhaps with your organization. Has that been already kind of clarified?
You raise an interesting point. Up till now, no. The property has been used for access to Hogel because they can't get equipment there otherwise. And so they've been crossing this property. I anticipate that we'll have that conversation at some point. It's not codified yet. And I don't know that it ever was. It was just happening.
Partially through the existing right-of-way.
Down Shore Drive.
De
Yes.
facto right-of-way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on its own access path across the property labeled 6.3, and then down the hill. Yeah. That's not written down anywhere, I don't believe.
Right.
But we will want to establish that.
And I don't know if it's a concern for you, given what may be underground and how that works, and
It's a good reason to do that.
to
codify that. Yeah. Have a formal arrangement, understanding. Yeah.
Brian, are you,
yeah, that's all I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
can we require a new plat?
I don't think you should. There's an existing plat, it's fairly recent. It has delineated right-of-way, and those are all private property rights that have been established, so I don't think you should disturb it. It's just a matter of the legal rights-of-way really don't line up very well with the actual trailways and
Yeah,
other
it
uses
is
on
plotted out, but
lawns.
people walk where they're gonna walk, and we need to just make that more clear.
Make the trails more clear.
Make the lines more clear.
Yeah.
And Vermont Land Trust is going to engage a surveyor to do that.
Are there any other comments or questions from members of the public? Yes.
I guess it's the microphone.
For the TV.
Yeah, I'm Patty Swanson. I live at 59 Eaton Ave, which is directly across from this property he's talking about. And I have a lot of questions I've written down and gone over a lot of paperwork, but my biggest concern is not only am I really gonna miss the people that live at the place now because they're really nice, but also we've been looking out for each other the last several months. And when they're out of town, you know, I'll call if I see something wrong. So that's really nice. And what I'm most concerned about, besides all the other questions, is I live directly across the street, and from what you've said, no one's there at night. Is that correct?
Yeah, there will be no full-time residents.
So that's kind of scary to me.
There may occasionally be somebody using the living space if there's a tribal member in town and they need a place to stay.
Right.
It will be available.
Right. Well, what my concern is, because I live right across the street, I live alone, I have 2 cats, but it's a very quiet, I say this to so many people, it's a very quiet corner, which sounds lovely, except that it's kind of nervous, makes me nervous too, because I've learned over the years, you can't leave a place empty. You've got to keep the doors open, and you got to keep, you know what I mean? You can't leave a property empty. And if there's, the people that live there now, as you took pictures last night, they have the lovely little lights to their house, which I love, because it tells me they're home, it tells other people, and it's right on Putney Road, and I think we're all aware of there are problems on Putney Road, and they continue to happen. So having the place empty is a real concern to me at night.
I hear that. I'm very aware of those, conditions and likelihoods too, and that is why we will have somebody there most of the time during the day. And at night, we'll do as everyone else. If you're not home, you're gonna leave the light on or something. The place will be secured, it will be locked, and someone will be there regularly.
Yeah, I think.
And
well,
Stuart's gonna be living full-time out back pretty soon.
I've heard different rumors. I've heard he might have an Airbnb. I don't know. But it just concerns me because the people that live there now, who I like a lot, have the lights on a timer. So that then when they do go away, it looks like somebody's there.
Yeah.
And when there's no lights,
I've seen that, yeah.
it's pretty creepy.
I imagine we will be doing something very similar for the same reasons.
Doing what?
Keeping the lights on so that people are not invited to walk
No,
into
I
it.
have my lights on. I'm just saying, your property,
Yeah.
if it's dark at night, it's,
We'll leave some
I
lights on.
think what he's saying is they'll have lights on timers.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks wonderful at night. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're such lovely people. I was hoping that you could work together and they could help you run the thing, but no.
Well, they're not tribal members. And then you're getting into a situation where you have tenants again.
Right.
And the tribal tax exemption actually precludes that.
Okay.
We cannot have tenants, we cannot make any money on that. That's a condition. Otherwise, folks would buy property up and rent them all out
Right.
and not pay taxes. That's not the point, yeah.
Okay, I guess that's mostly what I have to say, because I'm just worried about how much people are gonna be there. You say you're gonna be there sometimes during the day, but at night, there's nobody there.
Well, as our neighbor Tom would say, we'll leave the lights on. Have you met Tom Bodett?
No,
Oh, he's,
but I know who he is.
yeah, he's our neighbor.
Yeah,
Dummerston.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? Any members of the board or members of the audience? Brian?
Yeah, just as an administrative matter, it could be really helpful going forward in future to document the current site conditions a bit more in detail than what this is. So Rich, if you could do a sketch of the site showing the actual location of the building as it is now and
Yeah, because that's the burn building.
yeah, and the location of the access and any area that you think might be used for parking, just sets a base condition that, you know, future site
I
administrators.
can work on that and file it with you.
That'd be great.
Should we make that a condition? We can make that a condition. So Brian, can you read the conditions that you wrote down again?
Sure. So the site plan features shall not be disturbed. Site plan changes will require administrative approval for minor site plan approvals and board approval for major site plan approvals. Signage can be administratively approved, and then something to the effect of a site plan drawing.
Will be submitted to the administrator. Anything else? Oops, wrong one. Is there a motion to approve the site plan and conditional use approval to change use from residential to religious facility in Nature Park at 25 Shore Drive with the conditions that Brian just mentioned?
A motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was Michael, right?
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And are we ready to vote? Yes.
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Dan?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Gary?
Aye.
Tom?
I'm in favor.
Nora? Yes. And I will vote in favor. So that's 7 to nothing. And the change is approved, and with the conditions that it'll be outlined in the written document that you'll get. And Brian will prepare it, and I will try to sign it as soon as possible, probably next week.
Uli uni, thank you. Nwata, I understand. And when I vote, I say which you can say as well, and that is the Abenaki word for yes, which has entered English.
That's where we got it.
So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? I have a couple administrative things that I'd like to mention. The first one is there are a number of people on the board whose terms will expire in June. And I want you to, so you need to be thinking about whether you want to reapply. And the second thing I wanted to mention is it's important that if you're not coming to a meeting, that you let either Steve or Brian know. Because we never know if we're going to have a quorum until people show up, and we weren't sure tonight. And the final thing I wanted to mention was if for any reason you have to leave the meeting early, please leave between applications. Do not leave after we've started talking about an application. Okay. So that's all I had to mention. Is there any more discussion or anything, anybody?
Well, to get in contact, I got to work late, that's why I was running late, but I could have probably emailed, I guess they would have gotten it. So since I started a new job working at Goodwill, they were down a person, so my apologies for being late to the members.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Dan has a hand up.
Oh, Dan.
Yeah, I just wonder if I could just put a note in about your concern about folks leaving meetings. I don't know if this has happened, but it could happen that the power goes out or the internet goes out if we're on Zoom and we get dropped. So
Well, that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about leaving.
Understood.
I mean,
yeah, I know. I was just going to suggest, no, of course not voluntarily leaving, but you could, if that happens, one of us could text Brian or text somebody or call even and let them know that I lost internet, can't get it back on type of thing. That's all.
yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely do that, and I will give my cell phone number to any of the members who don't have it, if you ask me.
You can have mine too.
Oh, could that be to any member who has the other member's number? Just let them know they're running behind or late.
You should let Brian know.
So we'll direct it to this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I turn my phone off when I'm here.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. I was
So do I.
prior.
Okay. Is there any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion that we adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll see you on March 15th. And
The day before.
the Ides of March.
Oh my goodness.
Don't walk out in the parking lot
That
by
would be
yourself.
before we.